Great news. Dirty Keto is now on Amazon. If you're living in the U.S., go straight to Amazon and get Dirty Keto. Watch it, rate it, and review it. If you're outside of the U.S., meaning Western Europe or Canada or Mexico, it's not there yet. Don't ask me why. Listen, those people made me put a PG-13 rating on it when there was nothing in it that would have caused that. But let's get ahead of this thing. Let's watch it, rate it, and review it. Go get Dirty Keto right now, and on with the show.
Thanks for listening to Vinny Tortorich on NSNG Lifestyle Audio. Welcome to Fitness Confidential One-on-One. Vinny Tortorich, founder of NSNG, goes long form with top luminaries in the field of health and fitness.
I am Vinny Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed, just like the guy on the other mic. You know, it's the Friday show, and we always bring in luminaries, and this is a different kind of luminary. If you're waiting for a doctor to come on and talk about how to lose weight or why you can't lose weight or why your hormones are screwed up or any of that stuff, you're not going to get that today. But don't tune out, because this guy is going to give you something different. This guy is going to motivate you in ways you never thought you could be motivated. He's written several books over the years. The Proximity Principle, From Paycheck to Purpose. That's right. We're going to be talking a little bit about money today. It's no different than what we do here. You know, accumulating money, accumulating wealth. It's no different than trying to lose weight. It's one and the same. And his book that just came out in 2024, Find the Work You're Wired to Do. Everyone always said, hey, Vinny, you remind me a lot of Dave Ramsey. And that's how I found Dave Ramsey. But this is not Dave. This is better than Dave. This is one of Dave's guys, one of his disciples, if you will. I'm talking about none other than Ken Coleman. Yeah. How you doing,
I'm ready
Ken?
to tackle somebody now. Give me a helmet, and I'm going to tackle somebody. that was great, man. Let's go. I'm ready to run through a door.
You're ready, right?
Oh, yeah, baby.
You know, I've been listening to you for a while. My wife turned me on to you. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. Here's the thing. When I met my wife 18 years ago, we've been together for almost 18 years now. Mm-hmm. Early on in the relationship, my wife is an actress. And actors make a lot of money, and then they're unemployed. And then they make a lot of money, and then they're unemployed. That's the world of an actress. And when I met her, she was already in her 40s, her early 40s, and she had already done the cliche acting move. She moved into real estate. And as it turns out, she was really good at real estate. Half the shit sold around Calabasas, California. My wife was in the mix.
Nice.
The woman, you know, you would think, oh, beautiful actress, the whole thing. What could she possibly know about it? She dove in, right? But the one thing she never learned was how to accumulate money. Money, by the way, she never cried broke. She never, but she always drove a nice car. She had a house, everything. There was never any, oh my God, I'm going to go broke. But there was never any great accumulation. And then she meets me, basically the help. I'm a celebrity fitness trainer in California. I'm sure there's a country and western song written about people like us. And she says, when we got to know each other better, we started talking about what we have and what we don't have. And she noticed I always drove nice cars. I had several motorcycles. And she noticed that whenever I bought anything, I paid exactly one note. So if I wanted a new Ducati, when I went to the shop, I paid the note that day.
Mm.
If I didn't have the money to buy it, I couldn't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I grew up with Depression era parents.
Mm-hmm.
And she would ask me about that, and I would always mention this book I read back in the early 90s called The Millionaire Next Door.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, oh, I tried to read that years ago. I read the first chapter. I'm not going to split toilet paper in half. I'm not going to live. And I looked at her and I said, Serena, does it look like I'm splitting toilet paper in half? I have 2 cars and 3 motorcycles outside all paid for.
Mm.
But guess what? I have money in savings. I have Spider Index. She says, what's a Spider Index? So I had to explain it to her. I said, it's a mutual fund, basically. And I was explaining all these principles to her. And she couldn't understand how a guy who made what I made was able to have what I had.
Mm.
Right? And that's when I turned her on to The Millionaire Next Door. And then I turned her on to more virtuous books like Think and Grow Rich, which has nothing to do with making money, but how to live.
Classic.
It was on my New Year's resolution to listen. I've read it more than 20 times in my life and listened to it on audio, maybe another 20. My New Year's resolution this year was every time I got to the end, start over again. Now, I've lapsed a little bit on that, but I've picked it back up again because it's that important. Right?
Isn't it true that every time you read it, you see things that you didn't see before? Have you experienced that?
I'm going to tell you a story that the audience has heard before about this book. When I was 13 years old, it was September 30th. I was 13 by 3 days. We had 4 seconds until halftime, and we were going to punch the ball in one more time. We were beating this team 21-0, but we were going to go up 28-0 and then put in the second team. JV football.
Yeah.
The ball was snapped, and within 4 seconds, I crushed my right femur into so many places. The surgeon said, it looks like powder. So they put me in a body cast.
Mm.
When I was in that body cast, people brought me books. I was in that body cast for 7 weeks. Looked like something from a soap opera. I was from my tits down to my toes, body cast.
Oh, wow.
And people brought me books. I read the books. One of them happened to be, remember when books, you're too young for this, Ken, but books used to be sold like you would get like 4 of them in a carton.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that deal?
Oh, sure, man. I come from a long line of readers. Those were in my house growing up.
Yeah. And my mom was a librarian for 35 years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. And we're going to get into this. You and I grew up a lot alike. You grew up in Appalachia. I grew up on a bayou.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
We're no different.
Sure. That's
but
right.
I'm down there in that bayou, and I'm sitting there with these books, and I read all the fun books.
Mm-hmm.
Now I was down to Norman Vincent Peale, which I read cover to cover, and then Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And as a 13-year-old, Ken, I said, I'm going to read this book cover to cover, and when I get out of this cast, I'm going to be the richest 13-year-old kid on the planet.
Love that.
On the planet.
That.
Well, I read the book. I got to the end, and I couldn't find the prescription to get rich. It wasn't. I said, I must have skipped a chapter. I must have missed a few pages. So I got time on my hands, so I started over.
Mm-hmm.
And I read it again.
Yeah.
And I read the story of the little black girl who went to the guy down the street with the money, and her mom says, you don't leave there until he gives you money. We need money to live. Mm-hmm. And I started to hear the stories. I started to hear about putting your balls on the line in life at 13 years old and what that meant. And that's when I knew that this book would carry me through life. I'd like to hear your experience with it.
Well, I haven't read it as many times as you, but it's just the big takeaway for me was this was written so long ago by a very successful man. And it was really rewarding for me to realize that I think there's tremendous value in going back and reading things that were written a long time ago, because just by the very nature of the language, the stories, the context that was going on when he wrote the book, it's really valuable because with time, culture evolves, behaviors evolve with that. And I just think it's so important to go back and read stuff that was written a long time ago. And so from that, it was just a great refresher for me on how I was raised, that the way you think and the way you see the world has such an enormous effect on how you turn out and how life goes for you. And, for me, it's the antidote to victim thinking. If I were going to sum it up, I think if you read that book and however you take from it, and so much to take from it, my goodness, I think at the end of the day, if you really believe what's written in that book and you begin to apply it, I just don't think you'll ever have a victim mindset again. And the thing that troubles me so much about culture today is how easy it is, how encouraged it is. My goodness, we celebrate. And I'm not talking about real victims of horrific crimes and horrific dictators and things like that. I'm talking just your garden variety. Everything's against me. I'm behind the eight ball. This is my lot in life. It's this person's fault. It's this institution's fault. It's this party's fault. All of that stuff, it has become celebrated and encouraged to not own your weaknesses, because that's growth, but to almost lean on the weaknesses and lean on your circumstances and just take the easy way out. And I think that's the insidious disease in our culture right now, is this: I've got to rely on everybody else, and someone else is going to have to help me get out of my situation. Now, we all need help, but I think help presents itself to people who are willing to help themselves.
You couldn't have said it any better. I blame it on the Olympics. I want to say about maybe 4 cycles ago, the Olympics back before probably the early 2000s, you would watch the Olympics and everything was a come from behind story. The networks would go right before the swimming race. They would go, they showed a guy warming up and doing all of the stuff, and it's like, but it wasn't always like this for Jesse. And then they would put on the sad piano story and go into a 5-minute piece as to how Jesse was born with no arms and no legs, pretty much, and now he's the greatest swimmer in the world, right? And it became laughable. It just became laughable. Not everyone, look, I grew up an athlete. I played D1 football. Bottom line, you have a lot of help to get there. Yeah. Right. But they would never really talk about that. They would just talk about how this person was, everything became a Rocky Balboa story, right? Everything was come from behind. And I get what the networks are doing. It's not exciting to watch people go back and forth in the pool. So we have to put something on in between. Right. And now we're doing it more and more to where the last Olympics, we're looking at, they're not even talking about the cultures of the countries. They're talking about how many different genders of the people are in the pre-ceremonies. We heard more about the pre-ceremonies than we heard about the actual stars of the Olympics, right? Which is a problem. So if you're doing it there, where else are you doing it, right? You're doing it everywhere. Everyone's a victim all the time. Right, which brings me to what you were talking to with my buddy Mike Rowe. You guys got into the Stoics, right? Stoicism. And when you guys were talking, it was reminding me of a time in my own life. And let me explain, and maybe you can add on to this. I was an ultra cyclist, and I started back in the early 1990s, long before Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that, right? And when you did any kind of ultra sports, either ultra running or ultra cycling, you didn't really mention it to anyone else. The reason you didn't mention it is because you seemed like a freak, right? Why did you feel like a freak? Well, no one goes out and rides a bike for 300 miles on a Saturday just because, right? Because they're training for a 600-mile event or whatever. So what I would do when all my friends knew I was way into some weird sport or whatever, and when I would get invited to a dinner party in Beverly Hills, they would go, "So Vinny, you're into the cycling thing?" "Oh yeah, absolutely." It's like, "How far did you ride today?" And I would always say the same number. That number was 75 miles. And the reason I would say 75 miles, even though I might have ridden 250 miles that day, is because to any normal person, 75 miles seems like a lot, right? But not so much to where they're going to start asking questions, because I didn't want to talk about it. I thought what I did was boring. I wanted to hear about their life, or I wanted them to ask me about something else in my life, not the fact that I rode 300 miles that day, right? It was some sort of stoicism where I didn't have to tell them everything. Cut to today, if someone walks 10,000 steps, you're going to hear about it on Instagram, right? They're going to take a picture, show it to you. I went 10,000 steps. Guess what? You didn't do a fucking thing. You walked 10,000 steps. Any comments?
Well, yeah, I think the thing that comes to mind is, and I don't know you well. I want to get to know you. I'm very excited now to get to know you, but there is a level of conviction that stands out to me. And so the besides your personality and the way you're wired, the idea of you not wanting to kind of get into it with some layperson, right, who hasn't ridden a bike in 25 years, and their brain is literally unable to process 75 miles and that was a fraction of what you did. So for you to try to explain that conviction to somebody who doesn't even understand your conviction, yeah, it's pretty exhausting. And it's just you saying, look, this person doesn't even get it. And so that's not a particularly profitable conversation for somebody who can't even concept 75 miles, much less 250. And what happens is we're all kind of walking around bouncing into other humans, and there's this general interest around, hey, tell me a little bit about you. And we're all kind of wondering, well, why does Vinny do that? And when it's such a strong conviction like ultra cycling, okay, that's a strong conviction. Right? That's next level. That's an extreme sport. And I like the word extreme when we refer to it that way, because really extreme isn't about the sport. I think extreme is about the conviction to engage in that level of the sport. In other words, it's not that the cycling itself is an extreme activity. It's the volume of the activity and the commitment to the activity that in itself is extreme. So it's really hard for someone who doesn't share a deep conviction that you share for them to understand it. And so my observation is, I'm going somewhere with this, Vinny.
I'm with you.
I'm setting up the context for our audience here. So this underlines is a better word, the importance of being super selective with who you spend time with. There's a long-running relationship study. It's the longest study on relationships in the history of the world, been done by Harvard, and it's still going. It's over 80 years because they followed people from birth to death, and so there's still people that are in the study. And you can research this. It's very, very easy to find. It's the holy grail of relationships. And one of the key findings of the study is that 95% of our success or failure in life, so just look at kind of the big categories. spiritually, physically, relationally, professionally, mentally, just kind of give you some easy buckets. 95% of our success and failure in life is directly related to the people we spend time with. So if you have a deep conviction to do an extreme sport like you, Vinny, then there's only a small amount of people in the whole world that would, number one, get it.
Right.
But number two, be in such a frame of mind to where you could actually talk about that thing. So the point I'm making is the things that you care deeply about. So let's talk to this audience. You want to change your physical life.
Right.
And as a result of changing your physical life, you're going to see mental, you're going to see financial, you're going to see spiritual, you're going to see relationship stuff come as a result of you doing what it takes to change your physical life. That's why you're here with Vinny. Okay. This is a radical change, and it's going to require extreme conviction, which then means you better be spending time with other people who have extreme conviction. Now, they may have an extreme conviction about exercise or spiritual things or money or whatever. It doesn't have to be about losing weight and getting fit, but you better be hanging around people that are of deep, extreme conviction about something, because they then will get the journey that you're putting yourself on. They will then be able to truly encourage you as few other people can. As much as your friends and family love you, they can only do so much when you're going through something that is extreme. You need to be around people who also hold extreme conviction. So that's my takeaway from what you said.
Yeah, and I think you and I, we do the same thing, meaning through the Ramsey solutions and all that, right? Mm-hmm. If someone really wants to change their life or their business or whatever it is, because Ramsey has all these different things, all you have to do is plug in and relax into it and listen, be part of what they're talking about, understand what they're talking about. It doesn't happen the first time you listen to Dave. It doesn't happen the first time you listen to Deloney, and it certainly doesn't happen the first time you listen to Ken Coleman. It doesn't.
Yeah.
But if you keep listening and it becomes a transmutation, you start hearing it, you start feeling it. Maybe you call Ramsey Solutions and says, hey, I want to be part of your free, I think they have free programs or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
And then it moves in. Oh, wait, you want more? We have this, that, and the other thing. And by the way, I'm not here shilling for Ramsey. I don't want him to make any more dimes than the guy's already rich. He's good. What I'm telling you is, this isn't about making Dave Ramsey or Ken Coleman richer. This is about helping you.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing. I have these groups. I have the Vinny Tortorich VIP group, and it's nothing but people who are really the conviction. They're really into this, and they really want to do it, and they're in, right? You have to be in 100%. And if you want to change, you're going to change. Right? It's no different, whether it's money, whether it's health, it's exactly the same thing. Right? I wish, it's just motivation. The thing, I wrote about it in my book, Fitness Confidential. Someone came to me, a very, very smart man, a very successful man when I was a kid. His name he's no longer with us, Joe Dean. Now, you may not know who Joe Dean is, but I'm going to tell you, and then you might know who he is. Joe Dean worked for a small company, United States shoe company at the time called Converse. Wasn't very big. And he was there at the beginning, one of the salesmen. He moved up into the upper realms, and then by the time he cased out, he was a multimillionaire. Joe did very well in life. Joe also went to the Olympics back in the 1950s in basketball. He and Coach Maravich over at LSU were best friends.
No kidding.
He was part of a kid named Pistol Pete Maravich and his success. So Joe Dean understood basketball. Now, Joe Dean told me one thing that I'll never forget. He says, I've seen bricklayers who are better basketball players than you. Meaning he was talking to me. He says, but stick with football because – and that's what I did. I ended up playing football on scholarship, but Joe was a mentor for me my entire life. He eventually became the athletic director at LSU when he didn't have to. It was after he retired. You want to talk about virtue and conviction? The man retired. He's rich. He's going to go into the lion's den, into a job that no one likes. He restructured LSU sports to what it is today. That's when they started becoming national champions in football. It was all because of the bricks he laid along the way. But I want to say about 12 or 13 years old, and he was giving me one of his life lessons. And he said, Vinny, have you ever opened the cabinet below the sink where the trash can is, and the trash can is full, is brimming over? And I said, absolutely, I have. And he goes, and did you just lay whatever, like the Coke can, whatever you were throwing, did you just lay it on top and close the door to make it someone else's problem? And sheepishly, I said, I've done that, Mr. Dean. And he said, here's the thing. Whenever the garbage can is full, don't make it someone else's problem. You see a problem, you take it out. Take out the garbage in life every single time. And he says, but there's another part to it. Never tell your parents you did it. Never talk to your brothers about it. Don't, hey, I took the garbage out. You guys, just do it and keep your mouth shut. And everything you do in life, I want you to take the garbage out.
That's good.
That got me off of Bayou Lafourche and got me into Tulane University and somehow got me to Los Angeles, California for a 30-year career and ended up marrying a Bond girl. That's how that happens. Right?
Yeah, that's the American dream, by the way, you just described. And it was all because you figured out how to take out the trash. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that. I'm going to give you credit when I tell it on stages. I'm going to talk about my friend Vinny and the story he told me once. That's such a great story.
I've used that story my entire life.
Yeah, it's great.
You know, it's the little thing. Think about it. You were in Appalachia. Tell us about your beginnings. Where did you start?
You talking about professionally?
Well, in life, you know, I read somewhere that you started off small. You wanted to be in broadcasting. Yeah. You did anything you could. You went to high school events and tried to announce basketball games. Your background is pretty amazing.
What's that? Oh, yeah. Well, so the professional side is the quick version is, and you interrupt me at any point, but I thought that my life was going to be in public service in politics. So I'm 16, Vinny, and I'm trying to take over the world. You'll appreciate this because we got an audience that's old enough to. You remember the show Family Ties with Michael J.
Keaton?
Fox?
Yeah, Michael J. Fox. Yeah.
My nickname in my early 20s was Alex P. Keaton. You know, people called me that. I didn't give that moniker to myself.
Well, Ken, give everybody, you know, the parents were hippie liberals and the one kid was.
Yeah. So Family Ties, the show, you know, it's like, they're a very liberal family. And the central character is Michael J. Fox's character, Alex Keaton. And he loves Richard Nixon. He's a big Republican conservative, and it's just a family show. But he's this outlier, and he's super intense and enthusiastic and wants to, you know, change the world. And so I'm certainly wired that way. And so I believe at the age of 16 that my future is to be a United States senator from the state of Commonwealth of Virginia, where I grew up. That was what I thought. And then there might be a chance, Vinny, if things fall my way, that I could be president. And that's as real as it could be when you're 16. I mean, I was that kid. And so went on that path. Fast forward, I drop out of college because I got a chance to work on a congressional race in 1994. I come back to school, and it's like in those military movies where you see a guy who's been injured on the front lines with his brothers, and he gets sent to a desk job, and he's like, get me back to the front lines because you've tasted battle. Well, that was me at college. You can imagine. I've tasted battle, and I'm sitting in a freaking government class, and this professor who doesn't know the first thing about politics is teaching me, and I'm going, bro, I've been shot at for the last 6 months. Get me back on a campaign. And so I dropped out of college and worked my way through a couple campaigns. I wind up on the gubernatorial race in Virginia, and we win, and I get a job working for the governor of Virginia as a special assistant, big old giant office. I got to go buy suits, Vinny.
Wow.
I mean, it's like I go from the fight to I'm in the general's office, if you will, and I'm 22 working for the governor of Virginia. Fast forward 10 more years, I'm in my early 30s. I've lost the fire in my belly for politics. I don't think that's where I can make the most change, but I have a bit of a crisis because I have been on that path and that mindset for a long time, knowing it was a longer journey. And now I've kind of sifted through this new reality, and it's like, that's not it. What is it? And it was really troubling because I'm a guy that really wants to suck the marrow out of life, to borrow a phrase from Dead Poets Society and Robin Williams' character, Professor Keating. And that's how I'm wired. And there's some unhealthiness in that I want to make a difference. I'm trying to, deal with that unhealthy voice of, are you enough? Am I good enough? That kind of crap. And I've had to deal with that my whole life. But so here I am in Atlanta suburbs, and I do the hard work, Vinny, and I realize that it's not a complete pivot from politics. It's a bit of a dial turn. And I really believe I'm supposed to be a public communicator. And I began to look into all those options. And I don't feel a call to ministry to preach, even though I'm a preacher's son. I don't feel this. I don't want to be this motivational speaker and be gone all the time from my family. That's not where I want to be. And then this broadcasting thing kind of presents itself to me, and I'm cutting out all of the details and the signs and some of the things. But I was doing the hard work of what are the clues from my past, and how do they match up to where my heart is now, and begin to develop the early stages of the methodology that I teach right now, which is very simple. I'm just dropping this in here. If you use what you do best, to do what you enjoy, to produce something that matters deeply to you, you are in fact living on purpose, very authentically, and being who you were wired to be. All right, there's that little nugget. But I'm sitting there and I have to start from scratch because I feel like it is broadcasting, and I love sports. So I figure if I can get into sports broadcasting and get in and develop some credibility, I do believe that I can pivot, but I've got to have a baseline of credibility, right?
Absolutely.
And so I start trying to figure it out. And I take a broadcasting class with a bunch of 20-year-olds. 2 weeks in, Vinny, one of the guys thought I was an instructor because I was, early 30s. And the thing you're talking about is the first live thing I ever did was high school football play-by-play on the internet.
Oh, wow.
And no one's listening except for the kid next to me who was doing color and my wife, who is a good woman and, wanted to say, hey, good job, babe.
Yeah.
And so those humble beginnings, I emceed a local festival where I introduced a balloon artist and a mime and, just doing the things that are just honestly and this is what I preach. If you think you want to do something, go do that thing when no one is paying attention to the effort that you're giving, because it's going to feel awful. And you're going to feel insignificant, and you're going to feel like you're wasting your time and all the other emotions. But if you got the grit to suffer through that, and it is a suffering of it's suffering on a psychological level.
Oh, yeah.
What I'm describing. But if you can do that, and after you sift through the real feelings, because by the way, that's natural, doesn't mean you're weak. Means you're a normal human, and you sift through those emotions, Vinny. Here's what will happen. After all of those humble experiences on my way home, after I was feeling awful about myself, I would get to the point of asking myself, but did you like doing the thing? You don't like the way it feels when no one's paying attention to you, when no one's affirming you, saying, good job, Ken, you're great, you got potential, you got something there, kid. When you don't get that, it forces you to ask yourself, did I enjoy the thing? And the fact of the matter is, I do enjoy, and I learned that I enjoy the pressure of performing. And so that was the early confirmation for me that I enjoyed doing that play-by-play. Vinny, I was there 2 hours before the game interviewing the coaches on the field, and they're like, who's this guy? What's complete game broadcasting? Oh, yeah, we're up in the booth. We're doing the broadcast on completegamebroadcasting.com. The coach is like, what's that?
Fake it till you make it, yeah.
But I'm out there on the field like Jim Nantz before the Super Bowl. I'm asking questions. And I will tell you, if I were to unearth those early broadcasts and anybody would listen to them, Vinny, you listen and you're going, that dude had the same enthusiasm and intensity in those early days as he does on his national show. Yeah. There's no difference in my engagement. And that's because I loved that craft, that I had a passion for that task, that role. And so that is so important. And so I started there, and that just gave me a little bit of affirmation in my soul that, hey, I do enjoy this thing. And then I talked my way on to a 12-state cable network with a concept called Life is Sport, where I went and interviewed all these big names. And I said, tell me the greatest life lessons you learned from sport. So it was all about character and success in the context of lessons that only sports can give, in my opinion. And that got me on TV. And I was like, you would have thought that I had landed, a show on NBC Sports at the time. Right. All these things were just like feeding my heart, and my heart was going, and that's the sign that the heart doesn't lie. And so I kept doing little things, started a radio show on Saturdays in Atlanta, paid $250 an hour just to be on Saturday. And I got to remind you that Saturday radio, nobody's listening to radio on Saturday. And again, showing up, real studio, learning the craft, dealing with the nerves, learning how to communicate in 8 minutes or less. All of these things I rely on to this day. And so just kept going, and got involved with a leadership organization that had a massive national conference. I talked them in, Vinny, to doing a podcast. You want to talk about, you and I are the OGs. Okay. I started the Catalyst podcast off of an article that I read in Fast Company. iPods were relatively brand new, and I read this article in Fast Company about podcasting. I go to these guys and I go, have you heard of podcasts? And they looked at me like I had horns going out my head. I said, here's what it is. It's just a simple mic. We record the audio, and then we can upload it through Apple, and people can listen to it on your iPod. And I go, I think we need to be doing leadership interviews. They were like, if you're willing to do it, we'll buy the equipment. Let's give it a shot. Yeah. And that would have been in 2006 or 7. I'm talking, I say this not with arrogance, but with pride that, I mean, I've been doing podcasting for a long time. Yeah. And nobody had a podcast back then. And so we became one of the top leadership podcasts in the faith evangelical world, because they were focused on evangelical religious leadership. And it ended up becoming a massive business leadership conference. So that meant Jim Collins, Malcolm Gladwell, some of the biggest names in leadership and business were coming in. And guess who got to interview them? You. Me. Yeah. And so cut my teeth early as an interviewer. And that's how I met Dave Ramsey. And to land this plane, showed Dave that I had the interview chops. And years later, he asked me to come join his team. I've been with him now for 10 years. I was the first person to host his show. And now I co-host his show. He renamed it The Ramsey Show. It used to be the Dave Ramsey Show. It was just a one-man deal. And the day that he gave me the opportunity to sit in for him, our whole team was in the lobby. There were like 300 people in the lobby going, wow. Has Dave lost his mind? Is Ken going to burn this radio show to the ground? And this is the third largest radio show in the country. Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and the Dave Ramsey Show. And all of a sudden, this guy named Ken Coleman, to the audience, doesn't know me from Adam's House Cat. And I had the radio experience. I had Rachel Cruz, Dave's daughter, on. She could answer the money questions. I could chime in, but I was going to get her in and out. And I could land. I could get into a break. I could get out of a break. I knew how to handle the calls because I had all that radio experience. And, sitting there that day, Vinny, about 2 minutes before we went live, I was like, I'm about ready to talk to 15 to 20 million people.
Yeah.
Live. And I had an eerie calm about myself because I reminded myself, you've done radio thousands of times at this point, and this is just a radio show. Do what you know to do and settle in. And it's an extraordinary story, and I'm grateful to Dave for believing in me, because that was no small thing for him to hand that mic over and let me sit in his chair. And so that began, obviously a really terrific rise for me with Dave and what I'm doing now. So that's about as quick a version as I can give of that.
Listen, I listen intently when people speak. There's one white elephant. There's one big giant elephant in that room. When you're sitting there with a wife and the life, doesn't seem like much money was coming in.
No.
And you're sitting there with a color man and your wife as the only two audience members. Do you look around and go, how in the hell am I going to make this work? How does that, what happens there? And look, this is no different than when people go, I don't know how I'm going to start losing weight. I weigh 600 pounds. What am I going to do? What did you do on day one? How did you support yourself and your wife?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, had my own. So in that transition, I was working for John Maxwell, leadership guru. And when I left him, I had a lot of consulting gigs, and we had a comfortable life. I wasn't killing it, but we were comfortable. And I had my own small business, and doing some consulting and some big sponsorship sales deals with other live events. So between the two of us, Stacey and I worked together. She did the logistics, I did the deals, and I did the consulting. But we had a comfortable life. We didn't have a ton of margin, but we were okay. But the question that you ask is a beautiful question, and I want to tie it to the audience that's listening today. What I did not do is, in that moment where I'm an hour and a half away from my wife and 3 kids on a Friday night, broadcasting to nobody, what I did not do was ask the question, how am I going to become a nationally syndicated radio host or a TV host and be able to pay for my kids' college, pay for my daughter's wedding? I didn't ask that question. Here's what I asked. What do I have to do right now that puts me in position for the next step that ultimately will lead to where I want to go? So, in other words, if you want to lose 150 pounds or 300 pounds or whatever, if you spend all your time going, how am I going to lose 300 pounds? How am I going to avoid this temptation to eat this way or to do whatever? How am I going to, here's the analogy, get to the top of that mountain? You will never get there. But if you say, what do I have to do today? And what do I have to do tomorrow to put myself in a position where I'm making progress that I will eventually learn how to sustain and to get me up that mountain? Then you will climb the mountain. You will lose the weight. And so I'll take you to a real exercise analogy. Dave Ramsey guilted me, Vinny, in front of our entire company staff meeting years ago, because he was in some bet challenge with his CEO buddies about who could have the most employees sign up for the Nashville Marathon. So he's like guilting me into this. And I hate running. I like pickleball. I like basketball. I like running involving a ball and an action. I don't like to just go pound the pavement. It's madness to me. And I joke about that all the time. So I say to him, I'm not doing it. He goes, come on, Coleman, you're going to do the half marathon. Come on. So I finally sign up. So Vinny, I'm a guy that goes all in. So It's 12 weeks to the half marathon, and I've never trained. And I call a buddy of mine who's an extreme marathoner, triathlon guy, and I go, create a 12-week plan for me to break 2 hours. I got to have a stretch goal or I won't do this.
Right.
I'm going to fast forward to some of the early days where I was first starting to do some significant runs with some slope. Okay. And I remember, Vinny, one of my first runs where I had to do a significant slope. It was up and I could see where I had to go. And this is early in the run. And I'm about an eighth of the way through that, Vinny. And I'm talking to myself and I'm saying, you're a grown man. You're a grown man. You don't have to do this. You can tell Dave, I'm not in. I'm out. I'm going to go get an iced tea and watch football. Why am I out here doing this? This is not something that I enjoy doing. It's not something that I really want to do. I'm having this conversation. And then I realize I made a commitment. This is going to teach me so much about myself. It's going to make me better in ways I don't even understand. So I better figure out how to get up this hill. So here's what I came up with. I stopped looking up. I was running and I was looking to the top of this hill, and there was a street sign that I could see, and I thought, oh, I got to look at that. But the more I looked at that, Vinny, the more I realized how freaking far away it was and how hard it was. And I'm realizing this in the moment. And I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so it took me probably half of that hill to realize, wait a second, what if I stop looking at that sign? Because all that sign is reminding me of is how far and how hard this is going to be. So I got off of the sidewalk so I wouldn't run into anybody, and I got into the street, Vinny, and I began to look down. And I said to myself, just watch your feet. Watch your feet. Focus on your feet. And I started looking at my feet doing this number right here. And my eyes, and this is a powerful lesson on focus, my eyes were just focusing on my feet. And would you believe that it only took about a minute of that, and it changed everything for me? My mindset wasn't on how far and how hard. My mindset was, oh, I'm making progress.
Yeah, perspective.
And I got to that sign, and I wanted to stop and go, I need to find a stranger and tell them what I just learned. Yeah. And it changed the rest of my training. And it got me through the half marathon that day when I went through some severe cramping, and I looked like that poor wildebeest in all those African Discovery series that's getting chased by the lion. You're like, oh, that poor guy, he's going to die. You know, that's what I felt like on that last mile. So I say all that to say, if you want to win on a big time conviction, long-term goal, you're going to have to focus on the daily steps.
Right.
And then we start stacking steps, and then we start stacking days. And I think that's the key takeaway.
You know, every time someone calls me for a consult, and they'll say, how long does it take me to lose? You know, will it take me to lose this weight? And I'll say, well, you're already done. You might as well not even start. And they'll say, what are you talking about? And I'll say, well, okay, you weigh 400 pounds right now. I'm going to guarantee you've lost at least 100 pounds 3 times in your life. And they'll sheepishly go, yeah, actually 4 times. It's like, okay, but you're at 400 pounds. So you didn't keep the weight off, because life is not a destination. Life is a journey. If you're worried about when you're going to lose the weight and get down to your goal weight, on that day when you get there, you're going to turn around and start going back. You need to make a lifestyle choice. You need to make a lifestyle change. If you can't do things right once in a while. You have to do them right all of the time. Get your pen out, Ken. You're going to have to write again for your next speech. But one of the things I always talk about is I used to rock climb. You know, like you saw the guy in Free Solo, but except I wasn't stupid enough not to use a rope. I was always roped in. No Alex Hanel here. But
I was been so stressed out in my life, Vinny, watching TV as when I watch that.
It's the most incredible. I don't know if I'm going to brag for a second. That movie poster behind me, Fata documentary. Yeah, we knocked them out of the top position on documentaries. Right, they were in the top position for weeks. We knocked them off. We stayed there for I think 4 weeks, maybe 5. And then Aretha Franklin died, and a documentary came out and knocked us off. Yeah. And then we came back and overtook Aretha. Sorry, I love you, Aretha. Yeah. And we stayed there. But guess who got documentary of the year? Free Solo, not me. Yeah. Right. As a matter of fact, that movie's now 5 years old. It's still in the top 20. Last week, I can show you a screenshot. On Apple, a documentary still in the top 20.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy.
It's freaky. It's freaky to watch. But anyway, I'm sorry, you were saying.
All right, so when I used to rock climb, and I told this to my buddy last week. I said, he was talking about the journey, and I said, every time I would stand at the foot of a rock and you would look up and it could be 500 feet, 1,000 feet, whatever, you can only see the first 2 or 3 handholds and the first 2 or 3 footholds.
Yeah.
You can't see any further than that. You now have to engage. You have to be on the rock. And once you're moving up the rock, now you can see where the next handhold is. You can see where the next foothold is. You now look, your perspective, as you go up on the rock, your perspective changes. You couldn't see it from the ground. But once you started the journey, you saw what needed to be done next. And that's more important than standing on the ground. Like I tell people all the time, everyone goes on the internet. They go to Instagram, they go to YouTube, and they get analysis paralysis, right?
Yeah.
They just analyze until they're paralyzed and they're standing on the ground looking up at a rock going, I can't do it. When all you have to do is do it. Now, you and I have another parallel that you mentioned a little while ago. When I was in New Orleans, I saw kids getting fat. When I graduated from Tulane, I went right to Newman School, one of the biggest high school, one of the richest high schools in the nation. They happen to have a couple of kids there known as the Manning brothers. You may have heard of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I coached those kids. As a matter of fact, Cooper, his kid now, Arch Manning, is one of the top.
Yeah.
I took that kid on spring break. I love
crazy.
Cooper. I love those kids.
It's crazy.
So I'm at Newman School looking at these kids going, wow, kids are getting fat. I graduated in 1981. Here I am in 1987. These kids are fat. So I went to every radio station in New Orleans and said, I want to do a show, a call-in show where people who need to get in shape, they can call. I got turned down by every single radio talk show in New Orleans. Guess what I did? Started over and went around again.
Love it.
And got turned down again. So finally one day I saw an infomercial on television and it dawned on me. Infomercials are buying time from a television station to put these things on, hoping that they will make their money back somehow. So I went to one of the radio stations and I said, it was WSMB. I don't think they exist anymore. And it was an AM station. I said, listen, I'm back again. I said, look, we're not going to give you a job. We think that's the stupidest idea we've ever heard. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Can I buy advertising time? And they went, absolutely. So they sent me to the advertising department. And I said, what do you guys charge for advertising? And they told me. And I said, okay, I want to buy an hour's worth. And they said, well, what would you like to advertise? I said, me. And it's like, well, who's going to do the ads? I said, me. Where's your ad? Where's your ad copy? I said, I'm going to do it live.
Right.
And they said, well, how many spots would you like? You bought an hour, you can get 60 spots, or you could get, 120, 30-second spots. I said, I want 1 hour spot, 1 hour on a Saturday. And they said, well, we don't do that. And I said, well, why? I said, you told me you could sell me an hour. So they ran it up the flagpole. They gave me an hour on the Saturday. And they said, let's prove to this idiot that he can't do radio.
Right.
Right.
I love it. We literally have the same story on that.
Yeah, it's exactly. So I go in. This is 1989. I do my hour. I got my girlfriend sitting at home. I said, listen, if no one calls in, you need to call in.
Yeah, I've been there.
Right. So I go on and I start talking. I said, who I am. I'm from Tulane. I have this degree in exercise physiology and nutrition. I work at Newman School. I was on the Tulane football team. If you guys have any questions about health and fitness, call in. The lines light up.
Wow.
But there was one phone call that changed my life. This woman called in and said, I started running. You got to remember, this is the 80s. I started running, and my friend tells me I can't run in my regular tennis shoes. I need to get running shoes. Is that true? And I said, well, you can run for a while in tennis shoes, but running shoes, they're more comfortable. As a matter of fact, I said, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Where do you live? And she goes, I live in uptown New Orleans. I said, great. There's a Foot Locker right next to Camellia Grill. Do you know where that is? She goes, oh, I love Camellia Grill. I said, okay, stay out of Camellia Grill, but go to the Foot Locker. And when you walk in, I gave the owner's name. I said, the owner of the Foot Locker stays in that store. He owns 8 locations around the greater New Orleans area. Go to that store. The owner is in there. Tell him Vinny sent you. Okay? And he will set you up with the best running shoes you will ever have. He'll tell you, he'll fit you. He will tell you exactly what you need. And I said, if you mention my name, he might give you a little discount. Just tell him you know me. Just lie to the guy. Well, I did my show. I went on my way. Never to do another show. About two weeks later, I'm at Camellia Grill. The owner sees me walking into the restaurant. He comes running out of his store. He goes, hey, Vinny, come in here. I said, what's going on? He goes, what did you do? I said, what do you mean, what did I do? He goes, what did you do? And I said, I didn't, what are you talking about? He goes, people are running in here wanting the Vinny discount. You were on some radio show and you discount. I said, oh, geez, I'm so sorry. Oh, my God. He goes, sorry?
Yeah,
and I told him the whole story. He goes, what did it cost you to do that hour? And I told him, and he goes, what if I sponsor that hour? And what if I give you a piece of the proceeds of everything I make over a certain amount?
Wow.
I said, you got yourself a deal.
Yeah.
I went back to the station and I bought a Saturday, every Saturday, 1 hour at 3:00. I got so popular that I ended up doing Wednesday and Saturdays.
Right.
I started doing 2 shows a week. I picked up more sponsors, and then the radio station came to me and said, we don't like what you're doing. We're charging you this. You're doing all of these ads. You're making the money. How about we hire you, and then we can sell ads? And I said, how about you kiss my ass, and we keep doing it this way?
That's right.
And that's exactly how we did it until I left New Orleans. The most popular show on their channel, Talking Fitness with me.
Love that.
You couldn't make that shit up.
No, you can't. And there's a real lesson in all of this, which is if you believe in a message, a product, a service, whatever it is you believe in, and you are willing to put yourself out there, you are increasing your percentage of success by 10x.
Yeah.
Because of the willingness to just go, I'm believing this and I'm willing to stick myself out there and figure it out as I go. Most people, Vinny, aren't willing to figure it out as they go. And this, by the way, speaks to your audience. Vinny's got plans. Vinny's got know-how. Vinny's done this. He can do this in his sleep as far as consult you, coach you, whatever he needs to say to you. However, it will not work. Vinny's best stuff will not work if you don't believe that you can actually pull this off. And belief is another way of saying it is confidence. Somebody asked me recently, a podcaster said, if there's this one thing you do, like what's the thing you give people? Not a product, not they were trying to get me into, and I just went, confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence is the thing that I believe that I'm truly trying to dispense. Doesn't matter how you encounter me or whatever. I want people to have confidence. And confidence is a result of conviction. We've been talking about that. Or another word I use a lot is clarity. If you have extreme clarity on what you believe, why you believe it, or what you want to do and why you want to do it, that clarity builds or breeds confidence. And that's belief. I believe that I can lose the weight. I believe I can do it. Okay, great. Now that's everything we need to struggle through it. It's not going to be easy. You're going to screw up. You're going to learn some things along the way. Vinny and I both did trying to do radio. I mean, we sucked at it when we started.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't want anybody to hear my first shows, Vinny. I'd be horrified if those came out of the vault. You know what I mean? But guess what? I don't get to where I get to be today, where people compliment me or say good job or whatever, until I embrace the suck.
Yeah.
It's like riding a bike. You're going to have to wreck the bike, before you learn to ride. Hey, look, Mom, no hands.
Yeah.
That's a result of not having skin on your legs. Or at least back in our day, we didn't have skin. Now these kids look like bubble wrap Michelin Man riding a bike. And by the way, that's why they're so daggum scared, is because they haven't learned how to handle pain.
Yeah.
The best way to learn how to ride a bike is to crash and feel it. Then you go, oh, I don't want to do that again. And so anyway, back to the belief issue. I think that's my encouragement for the audience is absent of belief, Vinny, me, Dave Ramsey, no one can help you if you don't believe that you can actually use what they're giving you to do it. People come up to us all the time. I've heard Dave, and I know this has happened to you, Vinny. I know it has. But for years, just kind of watching Dave receive these unbelievable, comments from people in real life. They go, Dave, you changed our life. And now it's like, you guys changed our life. Thank you. You guys changed our life. And Dave is always quick, and I've learned it from him. He's quick to say, and now I say it, I didn't change your life. You did.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
How many times has that happened to you?
Well, you can go look through my Twitter feed.
Well,
on a daily basis, people go, you changed my life. It's like, no. I made a suggestion. You did the work. I didn't do anything. I'm sitting here in my ivory white castle, and I did nothing. All I made was a suggestion. You did the work. We're all one and the same. Me, you, Dave. That's why people must say they remind me of you guys. We're going to make that the final word. I could go another hour with you easily.
Oh, bro. I want to break bread with you in real life.
Yeah,
I got to get to L.A. And next time I'm in L.A.
I'm no longer in L.A. We left L.A. in 2019, right before my wife travels back. She's on a soap opera now. She travels back to L.A. just to shoot the soap opera. And we live in Central Virginia. I'm in Charlottesville.
Come on.
Yeah.
Dude, I grew up in Hampton Roads, just right there between Smithfield and Newport News. Yeah. Across the James River.
I'm right here. I'm right here. I live right by the Ravenna.
God's country. I know exactly. I'm a huge Jefferson fan, and I love, of course, you can't say that anymore, but, point is I love Charlottesville. It's one of my favorite towns.
Well, we definitely have to get together. You got to stay on until we end this. But also, folks, if you go start listening to Ken's podcast, and I suggest you do, start with the one on politics. It's maybe 4 or 5 shows ago, right? Where you talk about if you're on the left, you believe this. If you're on the right, you believe that. And no one's talking anymore. Right. I thought it was brilliant. I heard it.
Thank you.
Had to be a couple of weeks ago. Go listen to everything this guy is doing. We got so into the conversation, I forgot to run ads today. So Villa Capelli olive oil. Let me run a quick ad here, Ken. Sorry.
Go
Villa
for it.
Capelli olive oil. Best olive oil on the planet. You know that. They've been with us for 10 years. Get Villa Capelli. Put in promo code Vinny, V-I-N-N-I-E. No wimpy Y. You want to get that 10% off. You spend more than $125 after the Vinny discount, and you get what? Oh, just free shipping. If you buy 3 liters of oil, free shipping on that, that's a big expense. Save that money, folks. Also, we have the VinnyTartaries.com/row. You can still sign up for that VIP. VinnyTartaries.com/row, R-O-W-E. That's Mike Rowe. Go sign up for that. Ken Coleman is the Ken Coleman podcast and radio show. Everywhere you want to find it. The books, The Proximity Principle, the Paycheck, From Paycheck to Purpose, and Find the Work You're Wired to Do. I'm going to read all 3 of these. And then they'll be in the Vinny Book Club over at Amazon. So give me 5 minutes to run through these books. And then I'll probably read Find the Work You're Wired to Do first, because that's the latest book. And then we'll throw that one into the Vinny Book Club. Probably by the time this show comes out, it will be in there, which is 3 weeks from now. So check that out. Ken, I can't thank you enough for being on, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thrilled. I want to do much more with you. I love your spirit. You're helping so many people literally transform themselves. And that's good work, man. Good work.
Yeah, and keep doing what you're doing. As I said, hang out while I end the show here because we have to do this whole StreamYard things. Folks, on behalf of Ken Coleman, my name is Vinny Tartarich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.
Fitness Confidential. Get more information at VinnyTortorich.com. Remember to rate and review us on iTunes. And follow Vinny on Instagram and Twitter.